Hi, welcome and welcome back to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Maria Andrea, and today I have a different kind of video, but it's a really exciting one. A couple of weeks ago, Sui from Sui's Book Banter and I announced a semester project. We are taking back semesters into our lives, and we're doing a like a club. We're calling it like a personal curriculum club, a PC club, but it's basically like a learning club where we invite anybody who is interested in sharing their personal curriculum or personal study plans for the spring semester to join us and share what you're learning and learn along with us and learn in community. We hope to have a sense of community going. Sui is hosting the project on Storygraph, and I'm hosting it on Discord. And in May sometime, we're going to get together and do a live and have people come and join us and have a conversation about who's learning what and what we're all learning together. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So today I'm unveiling my plans for the spring semester. I have my phone right here, so I'm going to open up my Notion app because everything is on this app for me. And we will go from there. I wish I knew how to show my screen to video. I haven't learned that yet. Maybe that should be another thing to put on my to learn list. But for now, this will do. For spring 2026, my course that I'm doing, my self-study, is titled Yoga Plus Poetry for Resilience and Resistance. The objective of this study is to develop a yoga practice centered in resilience and resistance through gentle flows, poetic rhythm, loving kindness, acceptance, and strength building training. What's my why? I've shared this is my what. What's my why? So it's no surprise to anyone that things are a bit, well, not a bit, a lot challenging these days. I live in the United States and I am an immigrant in the United States. And it's, in 2025, it was a scary time to be an immigrant. I think in 2026, it's just a scary time to be a person with free will and free thinking. So if you're an advocate, if you are an activist, if you are speaking your mind these days, you're putting your life at risk, it seems like. So I think all of that can get pretty heavy, and the news doesn't let up. It's one thing after another. The cost of living is going up and up, and things are hard. Things are difficult, And I've been learning a lot lately, in the last couple of years. I've been taking coursework in liberation work. And as I'm looking at liberation work as a professional and having a liberation practice, what does that look like? I think what it looks like is that it starts with me. It starts with each one of us individually. To be able to speak out and speak up and advocate and call out systems of oppression. But we cannot do that if we don't really have our voice at the ready, have our physical beings available to do that. And so I am looking at ways to ground myself, because I think sometimes we can get caught up in like the noise of the news and the world around us and the needs, and it all feels so overwhelming that we can feel very like it's easy to like kind of get distracted. And sometimes a lot of people might just say, you know what, this is too much, I'm going to escape and I don't want to think about this or address this. It's not affecting me right now, so it's not something I need to worry about. And you know, that might work until it doesn't, until it does affect you as an individual. And so I think that's where I'm at, where you know, you see things happening and you think it's not going to happen to me, and then it does. And then it happens to your neighbor, and then it happens to people, you know, maybe 6 degrees of separation from you. And so for me anyway, I've been feeling like I need to feel grounded. If I'm going to do any good work in this world, I need to take care of my own body, my mental health. So I've been thinking of like what are things that help, what are ways in order to be able to be resilient. Resiliency and resistance were two words that were just um, calling me to like focus. So in order to be resilient, I need to have um, soft places to land and the mechanisms to bounce back. And there are going to be setbacks, and I need to know that when there are setbacks, these are the strategies that nourish me, that keep me healthy, that help me bounce back. And this is the community that I have available to me to help me, because we're not islands, we need each other. So as much as I am maybe a person that is community for another person, I also have people that I turn to for support. And so, and identifying those individuals and identifying the practices that make me feel grounded and feel supported. Um, I was thinking about how that makes me more resilient. And one of those strategies that makes me feel grounded and makes me feel like it's kind of my place in the darkest of times, when I've had times in my life when I feel dead inside. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but there's been at least maybe a couple of times in my life when I've suffered a traumatic event, and there's a numbness. There's like a numbness that comes to you. And the last time it happened to me, I remember saying, I feel dead inside. Like I cannot feel. Like I felt like a shell. And when it feels like my spirit and my mind have like shut off or distracted, or like have this out of body experience, and it's just my physical body and nothing else, what helps me kind of bring myself back into my body and into myself is yoga, is grounding work, is walking barefoot in nature, spending time breathing fresh air, gardening. But yoga has always been kind of like this place where I'm connecting with my body, I'm stretching, and I'm starting to find acceptance with with the loss, with the grief, with myself, with the uncertainty of life, by just focusing on my breath and focusing on my limbs, my body, my muscles, my strength, my weaknesses, my ability, my disability, um, and resistance. I met resistance in two ways. Once, I do feel like I need to get stronger, so I do want to do more resistance training. I want to be able to like work more on building strength, but also not just physical strength, but also emotional strength, and also resist what is wrong. Speak up when something is not okay. Not be afraid of using my voice. And so I feel like all those things are connected, and I want to be able to connect all of those things through a practice of the things that really help me. So yoga makes me feel grounded. Poetry poetry has been my comfort blanket my entire life. If I feel sad when I'm grieving, I come back to poetry. When I'm scared, I write poetry. Um, when I'm heartbroken, I write poetry and I read poetry. So I feel like all of those things are things that matter to me and that I know give me life. Um, so that's why I thought, okay, resilience and resistance. What are the ways that I bounce back, that I take care of myself, that I where do I get the courage? Where do I get the emotional depth that I need to be able to process, to think, but also then to use my voice? Um, so it's yoga and it's connecting with my body. It's I had poetic rhythms. It's creating a poetry. So I'll talk a little bit about my final project and how all of these things are going to come together in the end. So the physical part, the yoga part of it all, because it's yoga and poetry for resilience and resistance. I'm going to talk about the yoga piece first. Well, what kind of started all of this was this idea that I was going to study this. I was feeling like I needed grounding, and I was thinking I need to do more yoga. And I was, and that could be just a practice where I could say, okay, I'm going to stretch and do some yoga on a daily basis for 100 days and see how that goes, and then go from there. But I I thought, well, one of what have been the barriers in the past, because I've practiced yoga in the past and I've left it, and why am I not consistent with it? What's keeping me from doing this at the moment? Like, why is this something that I need to have a plan for? Why am I not doing this right now? And the answer to that is strength. It's my physical abilities. So a few years back, I was diagnosed with carpal tunnel. So my wrists are very weak. Doing a downward dog, some days it's easy, and some days I really struggle with just being able to bear the weight on my wrists. So I've had to make like adaptations where I do like the dolphin. I use my forearms to hold myself up on the days when I feel weaker in my wrists. So I have carpal tunnel. I also have a history of arthritis in my family. My dad died pretty young, and I always think of him and like how difficult he had arthritis. He had a lot of complications, and he ended up dying. And he was severely disabled towards the end, and I didn't know what that felt like. And then some days I wake up and I feel the stiffness in my bones, and um I feel the way he described feeling when he was younger, maybe when he was my age and starting to say like, and my mom also has arthritis, and so I would think back as to like how they would say things about how their bodies were feeling, and I never understood. And I'm starting to see it now, so I'm starting to feel like, okay, this is probably part of the aging process, and I know what it was like for my dad, and I know what it's been like for my mom, with her arthritis and all the lifestyle changes she's had to make to cope with arthritis. So I'm preparing myself for the ways in which my body might not be able to do what it used to do, but how can I not let it hold me back from doing something like yoga, that is something that is medicine to me, right? Something that uplifts me and grounds me and helps me in difficult times. So I I was looking at my bookshelf, actually, like behind my laptop. I have a little bookshelf, and I was looking at the books that I had there, and in there I had this book. I've already taken out, made a stack for myself here, but I got this book years back, and I started reading it, and I didn't finish. I didn't finish it, but I really liked it when I started it. And I thought, I think I'm at this point where I need to get back to this book and I need to read this. So then this was the book that started it all for me. It is How Yoga Saved My Life. The title is Bent, How Yoga Saved My Life by Anne Clendening. This is what the back says. Noah Levine, founder Against the Stream Buddhist Meditation Society, plurbed in and said, Bent is an inspiring story of the wisdom and redemption that is born of suffering and demoralization. Anne shows us that transformation and healing are possible for us all. She beautifully shines the light of awareness on how yoga is a recovery path. Read this book and join us in the revolution of awakening. And then this is a bit of the summary. It was nothing at first, just a little twitch. My left ring finger was twitching slowly, almost languidly, the way a fishing line does when you hook something without any strength. After that twitch, Anne Clendening has to find answers to a question. How does an LA hippie chick fit a diagnosis of early onset Parkinson's disease into a life of bartending in Hollywood rock clubs and teaching yoga? Anne Clendening is a yoga teacher, creative nonfiction writer, and columnist for Elephant Journal. She spent more than 2 decades working in the fashion business, designing, styling music videos, producing fashion shows, and bartending in Hollywood nightclubs. She currently lives in LA with her Australian husband and their boxer dog Sabina, where she's probably listening to Abbey Road right now with flowers in her hair. So Anne Clendening talks about having an early onset Parkinson's diagnosis and overcoming the barrier so that she could continue to have her yoga practice. And I feel like this is where I'm at, where I'm starting to see how my body is sometimes not able to do the things that I see others doing in yoga, but I still want to hold on to the practice. And I feel like Anne could be a good friend to me in this time, and I want to finish this book. I started and I didn't finish, so this was my first book that I said, okay, this is part of my personal curriculum. I'm going to finish this book, and I'm going to hopefully find a friend and find some guidance and find some inspiration to continue to practice yoga. And so then I started looking for yoga books, other yoga books that were inclusive, because one of the things about yoga is that sometimes it can feel like an exclusive thing. Sometimes when you go to a studio and you see people doing these like incredible poses, and it's almost intimidating because you feel like your body isn't able to do those things. And maybe it can, but you just need to break through some barriers, or you need to adapt your environment, your body to be. You need adaptations to help you succeed in doing incredible things that maybe don't look like another person. And the thing about yoga is that there's no judgment. It's like a judgment-free practice, and I think sometimes we get caught up in those expectations that we set for ourselves when we compare our bodies to others and our abilities and disabilities to others. And so it's all about like reshifting and kind of relearning how to accept yourself and your body. So I wanted to get some tools under my belt that I could have as knowledge basis, so that when I'm practicing yoga, whether it be I'm watching an internet yoga video or I'm at a yoga studio and I see people, or I see a practice of like a pose that feels inaccessible to me at that time, that I can easily maneuver my body into a way that is right for me in that moment. So I did some research, and I did find some books that I got on like thrift books, and just looked for like thrifty options to these yoga books. So the first one that I wanted to read, because there's another book, another nonfiction yoga book that I want to read, it's called Yoke by Jessamyn Stanley. I didn't buy Yoga, but I bought this one on Thrift Books because I thought maybe I want to start with this one before I go to Yoga. And it's Everybody Yoga. Let go of fear, get on the mat, love your body. This book says, meet the unforgettable Jessamyn Stanley. A yogi breaks all the stereotypes. Jessamyn is a charismatic teacher who shares her personal story in a yoga book that breaks all the stereotypes. Everybody Yoga is a book of inspiration for beginners of all shapes and sizes. Through her indomitable spirit, Jessamyn convinces us that yoga isn't just possible, it's necessary, and we can all join in. It's a book for readers already doing yoga, looking to refresh their practice or find new ways to stay motivated. It's a how-to book with easy-to-follow directions to 50 basic yoga poses plus 10 sequences to practice at home. But most of all, it's a book that changes the paradigm, showing us that yoga isn't about how one looks, but how one feels. Jessamyn shares deeply personal, emotional stories, childhood dreams of becoming a beauty queen, the sudden loss of a beloved family member, with each one leading to a yoga flow that she uses when she needs to access a certain feeling. Quote, I want to energize my spirit. Quote, I need to release fear. Quote, I want to love myself. I wanted to share a bit of this book. So, and there's a section here that says questions asked by literally every beginner yoga student. What if my body is too weak to practice any yoga poses and I just fall in a heap on the floor? Answer. So I hate to break it to you, but that will probably happen more than once. It still happens to me all the time. Even after years of practicing, it's extremely common for yoga teachers to struggle, just like any new practitioner. The difference is what happens when we face our weaknesses. For example, after falling into the aforementioned heap, did you continue to lie helplessly in a pool of your own sweat and tears, crying for someone to come pick you up and drag you out of the yoga class? Or did you get back up and try the pose again? Everyone's body starts out at its own definition of weak, whether that weakness is physical, mental, or emotional. The most important part of practicing yoga is that even when our weaknesses cause us to fall, whether it's on or off the mat, are we able to strengthen ourselves in response? Are we able to gather our fears and learn from them? I think I'll leave it at that. But that basically covers some of the questions that I've been asking myself. How, on the mat and off the mat, how do I build resilience, and how do I resist oppression, resist systems that don't serve me or my community? And so I'm curious to see how, when I connect all these dots, what that does in terms of personal growth and vision. The next book that I was able to find on Thrift Books is Yoga for Everyone, 50 Poses for Every Type of Body. And this book is really cool. So I want to read the foreword here. It's not by the author, but the author of the book is Dianne Bondy. And it says, Dianne Bondy is a leading voice of the Yoga for All movement. Her views about yoga empower thousands of practitioners around the world, regardless of shape, size, ethnicity, or ability. Dianne's been featured by many media outlets, including Yoga International, Elephant Journal, The Guardian, Huffington Post, ESPN, Cosmo, and People. She's a leading spokesperson for diversity in yoga, for Accessible Yoga, Gayam, and the Yoga and the Body Image Coalition. So there's different, she gives you different variations for, like this is for tree pose. There's different ways to do a tree pose depending on your body and your ability. The foreword is by Amber Carnes. And Amber Carnes is the founder of Body Positive Yoga. And I like what she said here. I remember the first time I stepped into a yoga class, I sat in my car until I was almost late for class. My heart was racing as I unrolled a mat in the back corner of the class. I didn't know the first thing about yoga, but I was pretty sure that people like me didn't belong in a yoga studio. You see, I'm plus-sized, a person in a bigger body, round, fat. You can pick the word you like. The big body has always been my yoga body. Yoga marketing and the covers of magazines had taught me that the only thin, wealthy, hyper-flexible white women practice yoga. So there I was, in my fat, awkward, tattooed body, and my decidedly unfashionable workout clothing, nervous and waiting for class to start. And then I'm going to just kind of fast forward, and so it says, back then I'd have given anything for a book like this, or a teacher like Dianne. She's a masterful teacher and has an intuitive understanding of what folks' bodies are capable of. That's why she's the perfect person to write Yoga for Everyone. Each post in this book shows several different ways to personalize and adapt the traditional expression of a posture. This gives folks in many different body types, people of all shapes, sizes, and abilities, the opportunity to receive the benefits of each pose, even if they don't look like someone on the cover of a yoga magazine. Yoga for Everyone shows representation of what the human beings who practice yoga actually look like, contrary to what media images would have you believe. Yoga isn't just for thin, wealthy, flexible white women. Wellness belongs to all of us. Wellness is our birthright. Flipping through these pages, you'll surely see someone who you can identify with, and you'll definitely find a version of each yoga pose that can work for your unique human body. Dianne's teachings will give you agency to personalize your practice. You don't need to change who you are or hope for some magical day when your body is thinner, younger, fitter, or more flexible. In the words of Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. So that is Yoga for Everyone. And I'm still looking at, like, from the framework of disability, of, like, we're not all made the same. We all, have a need to adapt and have variations, and how to make yoga more accessible for people. And I found this book, Accessible Yoga, Poses and Practice for Everybody by Jivana Heyman. And this also has variations. Maybe in some of these I'm going to notice an overlap, but I just really wanted to find voices that I could cling to, explanations, philosophies that I could cling to when I feel discouraged in my yoga practice. Okay, I thought this was really interesting. This is from the introduction. What is healing? I graduated from yoga teacher training just weeks before my best friend Kurt died of AIDS in 1995. Kurt's death cemented my commitment to sharing yoga with the AIDS community. After graduation, I immediately started a yoga class for people with HIV/AIDS at the Integral Yoga Institute in San Francisco. I also started teaching a similar class at a local hospital, and the classes began to grow. Students with other disabilities began asking if they could join. I soon found myself teaching yoga to people with all different disabilities around the San Francisco Bay Area. Eventually, I got a job teaching yoga for the Dean Ornish Heart Disease Reversal Program. Dr. Ornish's research showed that the yoga lifestyle could reverse heart disease, the leading cause of death for both men and women around the world. Everyone seemed to focus on the extremely low-fat vegetarian diet he recommended, but what was almost incredible was that he had scientifically proven that yoga heals. He also discovered that two components of his program were particularly effective. The more time the patients spent practicing yoga and participating in support groups, the healthier they got. Those two things, yoga and community, became the theme of my work going forward. I worked to bring that same support group feeling into my HIV/AIDS yoga classes by adding a short time in each class for sharing and discussion. Sometimes we would read yoga philosophy or poetry. Sometimes we would just talk about how we were feeling. This created a very strong bond, and kept the same group of students coming back year after year. I remember one student named Gordon who had been coming to the class at the hospital for a few years. Gordon would share his struggles with his health and alcohol, and he would joke about how he wasn't a good yogi. He also loved when we shared poetry, especially a Rumi poem called Love Dogs. One day, Gordon told the group that he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which may have been related to his AIDS diagnosis. He told us he only had a few months to live. A few weeks later, one of the other students found out that Gordon had been admitted to the same hospital where we had our class. So that day, we all decided to go visit him in his room upstairs instead of doing yoga. We sat around Gordon's hospital bed, making small talk. Then he asked if I would read his favorite poem. Luckily, I had the poetry book with me, and as I read the poem, I could see his eyes glowing. I was amazed that he could be so physically ill, but seem so peaceful and so connected. Gordon died a few days later, and our class mourned his loss, but we were so happy that we were able to spend that moment together with Gordon, and we were all grateful to him for showing us how true healing is possible even in death. And this is a poem, Love Dogs. One night a man was crying, Allah, Allah. His lips grew sweet with the praising until a cynic said, So, I have heard you calling out, but have you ever gotten any response? The man had no answer to that. He quit praying and fell into a confused sleep. He dreamed he saw Khidr, the guide of souls, in a thick green foliage. Why did you stop praising? Because I've never heard anything back. This longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you toward union. Your pure sadness that wants help is the secret cup. Listen to the moan of a dog for its master. That whining is the connection. There are love dogs no one knows the names of. Give your life to be one of them. Rumi. The writer goes on to say, I thought a lot about the message of that poem, the idea that the grief you cry out from draws you toward union. It's our challenges that bring us to yoga, our pain that forces us to grow. I slowly started to understand that teaching yoga isn't about healing other people. Instead, it's about giving people access to the yoga practices and creating community to support that practice. Teaching yoga is about creating a safe space for people to explore themselves. And it's one of life's great ironies that the source of our healing is our own pain and suffering, even our anger. What does healing really mean if we are all going to get sick and eventually die? Healing is often proclaimed as a transformation to some idealized physical state, but that's really an illusion, isn't it? In fact, the illusion of perfect health is one of the things that actually interferes with healing. Isn't healing really a process of reconnecting or making whole? The word healing means to make whole and is similar to the Sanskrit word yoga, which also means to unite or make whole. Really, yoga and healing are about forging a stronger inner connection. This healing may or may not coincide with physical healing. In fact, it's possible to be healed and to die. So I thought that was really interesting because it's a lot of what I've been thinking about inner connection, about connecting mind, body, and spirit, and seeing it all as one, not like separate from each other. And then I got myself this book because, and this is a new book. I really liked this book when I had it for my physiology, the anatomy and physiology of the brain class in my undergraduate years when I was studying psychology. And it really helped me learn the brain and all of the components. And I saw this and I thought, oh, this is really cool. I learned a lot from my coloring book back when I was studying anatomy and physiology and neuroscience. And I think it'll help me learn a little bit more about my body. So when I'm stretching, I can practice understanding the muscles and the bones and the joints. So it's a coloring book, and so you learn as you color. So this is my text. This is my text for the class, and the other books are like handbooks, guidebooks to help me So that's the yoga part of my study, my personal curriculum. Um, Course practice session. So I actually started my semester a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, I did a New Year breathwork journey at like a local um, yoga studio, and it was really, really um, good. And I am going to continue to practice with different kind of teachers. So I might, do some yoga classes at the studio. I might do some yoga with Adrian on YouTube, and do some other exercise programs that are available to me. So I'm gonna be trying different teaching styles and learning from different yogis about what works and how to practice. So I did a class last Friday. It was a yoga meditation class at the studio, and then I went back to the studio this morning, and yoga really kicked my butt this morning, so I'm super sore. But I'm going to kind of do this intermittently, try different modalities in different classes, and just find what flows and what practices really work for me. And then what are some other course activities? I'm going to journal as I'm practicing yoga this semester. I'm doing a weekly grounding activity. So I get to choose what weekly grounding activity I'm going to do for restoration and mind body connection. So it could be a bath, forest bathing, gardening, taking care of my house plants, stretching, walking, reading poetry aloud, and maybe even creating a playlist of nature sounds. Looking at yourself through decolonized eyes collage. So making a collage of myself, but looking at myself as a yogi in my yoga practice, but also as a person through decolonized eyes. So like, who am I, and what makes me me? Doing a collage that looks at my day to day, my snapshots of my days, from a decolonized perspective. So maybe it's going to be when I'm connecting culturally with myself, looking at decolonized eating, like a decolonized menu, or wearing things that, like this rebozo that I'm wearing right now. It's meaningful. I was wearing this hat that was knit by um, the indigenous cultures of Michoacan uh, earlier in the day. And, I think looking at myself through embracing my ancestry, my history, the cultural parts of me that are important to me. So I thought that would be really cool to try to see if I could come up with that, just as a way of also grounding um, and maybe even like just a way of self-care. Um, and cooking ancestral foods and cooking, nourishing, like maybe decolonizing my food a bit from time to time, and like really being mindful of that, just how I nourish myself when times feel really, really tough. What is comforting, but also what is connecting me to my ancestors. So thought about incorporating some of that, and that's more for the both resistance and resilience. Sometimes I think colonization can draw a line between us and our past and our ancestry and crossing over that line and I think that's part of the resistance, embracing who one is wholly and not um, who one is expected to be. And then my capstone. My capstone is going to be to develop a flow, a yoga flow. The way I wrote it here is develop a reflection and resistance flow to the rhythms of poetry and spoken word. Very ASMR kind of like where I'm maybe recording myself reading poetry, poetry that feels grounding to me. And so I'll talk about some of the poetry that I'm looking at, but other resources like just additional resources if I'm needing to get inspiration or think about liberation practice or think about decolonization or think about resistance and resilience. I have Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey, which I read a couple of years ago, and also We Will Rest by Tricia Hersey. Self-Care for Latinas by Raquel Reichard. Revolutionary Women of Texas and Mexico, Portraits of Soldaderas, Saints, and Subversives, an anthology edited by Kathy Sosa, Ellen Riojas Clark, and Jennifer Speed in 2020. So these that I've shared so far, these 4 books I have on my shelves already, so I don't have to purchase them. I just kind of looked around my shelves and what is it that I already have that could be work of inspiration for where I want to be with my studying. I read this, so then go into poetry here. You Are Not a Girl in a Movie by Hala Alyan. I actually listened to this on audio and it was fantastic. And there was some really great poetry. And in this collection that I want to go back to, You Better Be Lightning by Andrea Gibson. I was actually gifted this book by my friend Pat at the channel Book Chat with Pat, and I'm going to be doing a catch-up video soon. I'll be able to show you some of the new books that have come into my life as gifts or recent purchases. Stolen Flower by Irma Pineda, translated from Vixasa and Spanish by Wendy Cow. You Are Here, Poetry in the Natural World, poetry anthology edited by Ada Limon. All the Possible Bodies, poems by Ian Haley Pollock. Poems of protest, resistance, and empowerment, why poetry is necessary and sought after during crises by the editors, the Poetry Foundation. And then a few quotes that I've been collecting quotes. I have to, but I'm gonna grow my collection of literary quotes for reflection as I'm putting together my soundtrack to my yoga flow. So I'm gonna record a soundtrack that then I'm going to play as I'm gonna be developing a yoga flow. But I recently read Eden Glassy with my friends at the Piñeiro Project, and I really loved that book. And a quote from that book that I immediately put into my personal curriculum was Colonization 101, Your Body is Not Your Own. Eden Glassy by Melissa Lukashenko. The poet Edna St. Vincent Millay wrote, Down, down, down into the darkness of the grave. Gently they go, the beautiful, the tender, the kind. Quietly they go, the intelligent, the witty, the brave. I know, but I do not approve, and I am not resigned. So that's it. That's my personal curriculum. I can show you some of these extra books that I've talked about. This one I didn't put in there yet because I just got it. I had ordered it a while back. I think it had been sitting in my cart and I finally was able to get it. So it's A Rebellion of Care, Poems and Essays by David Gates. I put this in here because it has some poetry that I'm going to be looking at. Somewhere We Are Human, Authentic Voices on Migration, Survival, and New Beginnings, edited by Reina Grande and Sonia Guillanzaca. This is a Stolen Flower one that I mentioned by Irma Pineda. All the Possible Bodies, Poems by Ian Haley Pollock. You Better Be Lightning by Andrea Gibson. And thank you, Pat, at Channel Book Chat with Pat, for sending me this gift. Like a New Sun, New Indigenous Mexican Poetry, edited by Victor Teran and David Shook. Social Justice for the Sensitive Soul, How to Change the World in Quiet Ways, Dorcas Chang Tozum. So these are some of the books. So like, let me see. These were books I already had. And then, oh, this one I got at the festival in the fall. And then this was a gift. And this was a recent purchase. So all in all, I think for the most part, I'm okay. And that's my personal curriculum. So stay tuned. I will be giving an update maybe once a month, just talking about the struggles, the barriers. Did I actually show up to the yoga practice? Did it kick my butt like it did today? Am I going to overcome the soreness? Am I going to be a regular at a yoga studio, or am I going to find my favorite teacher or flow online? I am just as curious as you are about what this semester will bring, and hoping for strength, resilience, and the courage to resist oppression, resist things that don't serve me or my community. And I thank you for being here with me. Thank you for following along. And if you're interested in community around this topic of learning and sharing what we're learning together, you can follow the Discord. I will put the link in the description box. And that's all. This is a really long video. Thanks so much. Bye.